Welcome to the Humanity Leadership Podcast, where we tackle your toughest leadership challenges and share practical tools to help you lead with impact.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining us for episode 2 of the True Success Blueprint. I'm Mimi, and today John and David and I are talking about what it really takes to grow and serve an incredible client base. We'll explore 2 of our True Success goals: delighting clients by consistently delivering value, and building a healthy, diverse pipeline that sustains the business long term. Whether you're a business owner or part of a team, there's going to be something in this episode for you. So John and David, what are some practical things we do consistently to delight clients?
Okay, David's giving me the look. I think he's sort of saying, off you go. So delighted clients. I mean, in our previous session, we talked about, the greater good and making a difference in the world. And the one thing we didn't talk about is the secondary definition, which is, I'm just going to read it. It's we increase the greater good in the world, by improving the lives of individuals we work with, and thus the people in the organizations they touch, right? And so it's very much a the primary unit or primary place of impact is with individuals in the context of their teams, their families, and their organizations, and that's how we make a difference, if you like. Now you add into this additional element of delighted clients, and so that's really recognizing a reality that you could be making a difference, but if it's not meaningful, useful, impactful for the people, quote unquote, who pay the bills, then it sort of falls apart. And it doesn't change necessarily how we, work with individuals, etc. But it does mean that we do, I think, two things. Number one is we connect the individual's, impact growth explicitly to impacting their team and impacting their organization in real ways. I'm going to add a third point now, but two, we no, I've forgotten, but I'll go back to the two. So,
Amongst
oh,
John's points,
yes, really. So two is that we are probably as user friendly and responsive as we possibly can be. And then three, we ensure that for everybody's sake, the impact that we have is visible and transparent, to people who ultimately have to make, the decisions that they make. Because again, in the spirit of things being connected, you know, if somebody's, making some great step forward, but, a stakeholder, upstream who's maybe approving a budget or sponsoring this initiative, if they don't have visibility to that impact, at some point they have to justify to somebody else. And so we need to make sure, for everybody's sake, that, you know, the impacts are both happening and that they're fully supported not only today but also into the future.
the warm piece of that for me is when you work with somebody around one of our tools, or the 50 do's for everyday leadership, or our red path, green path from what great teams do great, and you come back in a coaching session and they say, I took that home and I used it with my family, my kids, my friends, my spouse, whatever it is. uh, I think that's one of the things that makes people recognize the value that we bring, and it also gives us that warm feeling that we're doing something with that greater good picture when we hear that. And when you encourage that and say, hey, you need more resources to support that, we can help out. That's cool. then people get kind of bought in because you're actually helping the people who are truly important to them. And then they bring that back to work because it's worked at home. And so it becomes part of who they are. And so this sense of a delighted client, there's nothing nicer than having somebody say, I've started leaving work before 5:30 so I can have dinner with my kids, and I'm actually getting more done at work as a result of it. That's the when that's the power of that greater good thinking.
I would add to just listening to both of you talk, it really does tie in that financial security and freedom piece, not just for humanity, but for our clients too, right? So if we're making greater good choices for humanity, we're also making them for our clients. And if our clients start making greater good choices, then they're making greater good choices for their organization and their own family, which increases their finances. It is truly all interconnected. And I think that it's a beautiful little system you guys created.
I think,
I think that to
sorry.
where John was going as well, we're eager for feedback and responsive to feedback.
Hmm.
So I think it's one of those things that we pride our organization on. Is somebody's got some feedback for us, let's take it and let's build it in and tweak it and use it, and we eagerly seek it because that's the thing that allows us to be better next year, next time, whenever that may be. And I think that helps with that responsiveness as well. And we've probably got peers that have a product and they go and they execute on that product, and that's it. And we've got those things, but they're constantly evolving on the back of the feedback we get from people to make them relevant and hit for the clients that we're working with. And as those clients evolve, whether that be the industry or the size of the business, then we tweak our materials to fit that. And I think that's what people appreciate. It's not all just, well, this is it. You either have this or you don't. It's a matter of, well, yeah, it's a great perspective. I think we can add that, and let's tweak this tool to make it more applicable to you.
We use the word delight, obviously very thoughtfully and purposefully. And a analogy that we've talked about, many times is if you go to a restaurant and the food is not great, then you're probably going to tell 10 people, oh, don't go to that place. They're awful. The service is bad, etc. If the food is good, the service is good, you're probably not going to say anything to anybody unless they explicitly ask, and then you'll say, well, yeah, it's okay. It's good. It's probably worth the money I spent on it. And if you walk away going, wow, and you're delighted, then it's very natural that you want to tell people about it and you will bring it up to them. And so there is, and again, back to your point, Mimi, of the sort of the virtuous connections here of feeding is that if you know, consistently delight your clients, then you almost don't have to do business development. Almost. Um, I mean, we have, at least certainly for our first half of our journey, we really existed on, a lot of word of mouth. I would say, in recent times, with beefing up our business development and marketing, we have what I would call amplified word of mouth. But it really does start with delighted clients, and that makes everything, so much easier. Um, and then Dave, if do you have anything to add? Because I got a couple other things.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I think the other thing that I would want to offer here is that the light is in the eye of the beholder, right? I mean, it's you can be delighted and thinking, "Wow, I'm making a difference. This is awesome." I feel like people are really, really responsive, etc. But like I said, delight's in the eye of the beholder, and so it's really a matter of tuning into the beholder, which is, the client in a sense. And so sometimes what that means is you got to meet people where they are. So quite often people might come to us and say, "Hey, can you do a training on something?" They aren't looking for a organizational or cultural transformation necessarily, and they don't even think they need one. Um, but what we have found is, you know, unless somebody's asking for something, crazy or counterproductive, but if they're asking, for something like a training or something, etc., then you meet people where they are. You deliver that service. It may not, be an amazing making a difference in their organization because it might turn out that what they really need is not so much a training. It's they maybe need, some, real deeper work with key leadership. Um, but again, you have to be pragmatic about this, delight them, have an impact, and then you earn the right to have a more meaningful conversation about, you know, what does the greater good look like for you? What's the real need here, or what's your aspirations for the future? And then that leads to a progressive relationship of, both, you know, building trust plus multiplying impact, which leads to real partnerships. And that has actually been, one of our strengths is, we have, a number of people that we've worked with 10, 15, 20 years is real extensions of their organization. In fact, they even refer to us sometimes as, part of their extended family or their extended organization. And, we have earned that by delighting them, maybe from a humble start, but, you know, over time that has built that relationship and enabled us to have the opportunity to make more of an impact, to make more of a difference.
Yeah. So again, for our listeners, key takeaway, delight your clients and then turn them into long-term partners by delighting them consistently. Do
Yeah.
you have any other tips, tricks, advice that you would give for approaching one-time clients into long-term partners as an extension of delighting them?
The only thing I'd add is that it's that pattern of building the relationship that John's kind of alluding to, that if we have a one-off and it goes well, then whoever booked that one-off is going to get some follow-up to make sure that it hit what they wanted to. And then it was fairly consistent but gentle follow-up to say, hey, what else can we do and how else can we support you? And we're not by any means the kind of organization that once we got your email, we just blast you with everything. But that follow up that is genuine, authentic, and says, "Hey, how's the team doing? Did you do this? Are you looking at this next year? What kind of things that you're kind of authentically interested in what they're doing?" Um, Tends to trip some people over the edge, saying, "Hey, yeah, let's have a conversation about that."
I can attest as the marketing person that we do not blast emails out like crazy. So as far as our client base goes, it's definitely shifted and changed over the last 25 years. What is one or two lessons that we have learned about maintaining a healthy and diverse client base over the last 25 years?
Just to paint the picture of that, and I think I said in episode one that we started with like three clients: Ford, Kellogg's, and MSU, and for quite a while that was how we existed, was on those places. But then what you realize is if there's a downturn in manufacturing, that that's massive impact on you. And so we actually tweaked it a few years into our existence, that what a healthy client base actually looked like. And it used to be that we didn't want any, I think it was three clients to make 50% of our business. And we kind of said that and then laughed at it every year. Then we continue to push it and say, let's focus on that to keep us more stable and actively go out to broaden who we're working with and what industries we're working with, so that now I think, and you'll probably have more data than I have, our biggest industry sector is non-automotive manufacturing. And even within that, it's so diverse that we're trying to build something that is safe from the ups and downs of different industries so that it maintains that stability. And it also means it's good for the client, because if the client's having a downtime and says, hey, we've got to cut some of this, they know that we'll still be around in a few years when they find their budget again, because we're not all in one industry and we're not rising and falling with that one.
Yeah, John, thoughts?
So I was looking at the again we have this the component is healthy client base, and then we have like a little bit of an explanation behind that, and the explanation is we have a depth of long-term partnerships, and that really speaks to, you know, links strongly to the greater good idea, which is we believe that we do our best work and we have greatest impact when we have been in an extended partnership with an organization. They know us and trust us. We know them. They trust that we have their best interests, and we can really sort of dial into the systemic and root causes of their success, and help you know really address and you know amplify the things that are making them great and help them address the things that are maybe holding them back. So that's that piece. But then the second part of our healthy client base is, what we call a full pipeline and a broad base. So that broad base, by definition, may be what you might call sort of shallower relationships. It might be, we do a training, or we work with a couple of people in an organization, or we do a training series, etc. And that is that is sort of like our investment in the future. Not everybody from that broad base is going to translate into a long-term partnership. That's just the nature of, you know, the way it works, and the nature of organizations and their mixed needs and what they have in-house versus what they're looking for externally, etc. But that broad base, some percentage of that is feeding into long-term partnerships, and as Dave said, provides that really predictable sort of risk minimization on sustainable success, which obviously we care about. And as Dave quite rightly pointed out, that is you know essential for these building these longer term relationships where people can have a trusted partner and have the confidence that we'll be around as long or longer than they will be.
And that shows in we have clients that go back for the full 25 years. We have clients that are 2016, and a series of long-term clients that have kept coming back, not because they just want the same thing, but because we evolved together, and we've been able to maintain that partnership. So after a while, we just become a resource for the organization, that we're known, we're trusted, and that helps. But that broadening of the base has been very intentional and very focused effort to say what industries would balance out the other industries that we're in, and let's make sure we're working on those industries.
The 25 years running of uh, repeat clients is pretty impressive, and I think harkens back to uh, a goal of the greater good, both for our client and for humanity. And if we're all constantly evolving and we're moving forward together, then it sounds like partnerships are strong. So
And sometimes it's the company, and sometimes it's the individuals. So, both John and I have worked with people who've taken us to 3 or 4 different companies. And because as they've moved in their career, they've said, okay, first thing I need is this. And there's one guy I've worked with for 20 odd years, and I used to think, okay, he's just changed jobs. I won't hear from him for a few months while he settles in. And then, it'd be day one and the phone would ring. And it'd say, okay, I'm here. I think I need a Larry and I need a Bruce. And that was shorthand for people in the past. And so we could think about who might be interested in supporting him and what that meant and what those needs were. And so that relationship had been built in such a way that I became one of the first people he called when he started a new job as a CEO or a vice president of operations, COO type of thing, because it was a thinking partner for this new role. And it's just, it's been that investment again that we talked about in the first episode and again in this one that builds those relationships. And that seems to be what's allowed us to be successful.
So I think I want to build on something that Dave just said very quickly, which is the idea of that it's it requires an intentful, thoughtful, purposeful, dedicated amount of resources to maintain both depth and breadth. And again, going back in history, we had some deep, big partnerships. That, and in fact, every year we recognized for years, hey, we are vulnerable when we have 60, 70, 80% of our, you know, work is coming from, a small set of people. Trouble was is that every time we tried to push on, expanding our breadth, our partnerships were growing as fast and if not faster. And so we were struggling to keep up, but we were still focused in those small few. Well, we had a perfect storm in 2009, 2010. Part of it was macroeconomics at the time, for those of you who remember, and part of it was just a couple of critical changes in organizational executive level sponsorship. Um, and that really hit us because that 60, 70% in a sense, I wouldn't say vanished, but virtually disappeared over a period of 6 or so months. Now, we'd done enough work in the breadth piece at this point, such that we were able to scramble somewhat and obviously continue to exist. But it really sort of drove home the point that we needed to, make it not just, hey, when we get to this thing, when we have some time, it's like, you know, we need to dedicate the time and the energy and the investment to do this because we may not feel like we need it today, but at some point, because we don't control our world and don't control the world, we're going to need it in the future. And so it really also again speaks to this idea of, it's a connected reality, and that connection goes from today into tomorrow, and we need to pay attention to that as well.
That's just for anybody listening. The lean and scalable infrastructure is one of our true success goals. So stay tuned. It'll be on episode 4 of this series. I think that probably wraps up our conversation unless somebody else has a extra add. So thanks for joining us on delighting clients and building a healthy client base. These 2 goals are powerful on their own. However, they have even more impact when aligned with the rest. So keep listening to our full series on the True Success Blueprint, and you'll hear how all 8 goals connect and reinforce with each other. Thanks, John. Thanks, David.
Thanks, Mimi.
Thanks, Mimi. Bye now.
That was the Humanity Leadership Podcast. Make sure you like and subscribe and visit humanity.com for many more resources.